Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Taylor Talks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Taylor, and I'm delighted to say that I'm being joined by someone from the world of football for the very first time. Someone who's had a prolific career up in England and in Scotland as well, and has recently been coaching over in India and has had spells in America as well. I'm delighted to say that the 10th guest on the Taylor Talks podcast is none other than Owen Coyle. Owen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Lovely to chat with you, pal. Look forward to it.
So I've got to ask, how's this lockdown been for you, first of all? How have you been coping with all the restrictions that have been in place?
Yeah, I think as with most people, it can be difficult at times. We're a little bit lucky. We've got a little bit of grass here that we can get a bit of fresh air and what have you. So, but the important thing is that everybody stays safe and well. That's the most important thing. So ultimately, it is what it is, and we have to get on with it. So, as I say, hopefully everybody comes through the other side okay.
And obviously the football started back up again. We've seen Liverpool win the league. What's been your thoughts on the games being played in front of no crowd?
Well, it's a good question. I actually had the experience of that just there when we finished in India, because obviously we got to the playoff final to be the ultimate champions, and that game was then it was behind closed doors. So it was a bit of a surreal experience, if I'm honest. All the time the games have to get played, and that's great. We're getting played. Hopefully, in time, we get the fans coming back in, and because as we all know, the game without the fans, it's not the same game. So it was a bit of a surreal experience, but ultimately they have to get played. So it can be when you think about if somebody was to say about a game you played, a coach or managed, then there's always been a great atmosphere at the game, and that's what fans bring. So I think when we can get back to that, great. But in the meantime, we've just got to take those baby steps till we get back to the where we've been before. So but it can be surreal is probably the best way to describe it.
And as somebody who's so renowned for Scottish football as well, what was your thoughts on the Scottish season ending on the points per game basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think had it been particularly the top league, had it been really close, I think obviously then there might have been more made of it. But there's always going to be, because of the rivalry between Celtic and Rangers, no matter how many points was, there's always going to be a huge drama about it. As it was, Celtic were, I think it's 13 points clear, and there's no doubt they would have went on to win the league. And Glasgow Celtic and Lenny, a good pal of mine, they would have loved to have finished it on the field, as Liverpool have been able to do. But ultimately, the clubs, they all voted for it, and they all decided that's the way they want to go ahead. So it was the clubs that voted. So you have to take that and move on.
And for yourself as well, obviously you've been in management for a long time. How important has this time been to spend time with the family?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, because as you know, as a player, particularly as a manager, football, because it's a game we love, that is time consuming. It's 24/7, every thought. So when you get a bit of quality time with the family, it's always nice, and it's very important. So it's been great from that aspect. Absolutely, it's been brilliant from that. So no doubt about it. But as football people, as always, we miss the buzz, we miss the excitement. It's the best game in the world. I've been very blessed to have had my career in it. And it's what we love doing.
So before we go into depth about your playing and managerial career, we'll go back in time to your childhood. What was life like for you growing up in the Gorbals in Scotland?
Yeah, well, I'm one of 9. I've got 5 brothers and 3 sisters. Obviously, both my parents came over from Donegal, and hence the reason why later I played for Ireland. So we were brought up in an area in the Gorbals. It was all Donegal families. It was called Mini Donegal. It was all Irish families who were in the area. And brilliant. We all the brothers and sisters were bouncing off each other, and we loved it. And again, the first time you think about football, I remember my headmaster saying that I turned up the first day of school with a bottle under my arm because that's what you wanted to do. And great memories. A lot of good friends still keep in touch with, and really good people. And people looking to say, "Oh, the Gorbals, it's a tough area and everything else." It probably was, but growing up in it, it just seems as it was. With good people, so you get on with it.
And I've got to ask as well, you mentioned about Celtic as well. Was you a Celtic fan growing up in Scotland as well?
Absolutely. Well, I think in Glasgow you grow up either you're a Celtic fan or you're a Rangers fan. There's no anywhere. As much as you're Partick Thistle in the West End, but predominantly it's Celtic and Rangers. So Celtic's my team. They'll always be my team. That will never change.
And what was your first memories of going watching Celtic over at Celtic Park?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, as I say, I've got older brothers, but I remember my dad taking me, and at that time, you could actually lift you physically over the turnstiles at the time. So, and obviously, when you got to see Celtic are an elite club in world football. Their following is worldwide, and when you see the Hoops playing, obviously, it's a special buzz. So, yeah, you're hooked immediately, and that never ever leaves you, as you know. And anybody who's grown up supporting their own teams, who's your team? Who do you follow?
Bolton.
Right, so you grow up and you support your own team, and that never ever leaves you. That's a special club, as I know, and the fans are a huge part of the club.
So obviously you mentioned then your favourite memories. Who was your favourite player growing up? When you look at your game, who was it you based your game off?
Yeah, well, I mean, originally growing up, I was a left midfielder. So my two favourites were Tommy Burns, God rest him, who played at Glasgow Celtic, left side midfielder, Ginger Hurt, fantastic player. And my other one, obviously, because of the Irish connection, was Liam Brady at Arsenal and obviously in the Republic of Ireland. So that was my two. And obviously, my older brother Joe was a left-footed midfielder. He was a wonderful player. So I had one close at hand in the house. But those two, Tommy Burns at Celtic and certainly Liam Brady.
So you mentioned then, obviously, at school you was football mad or anything. Was that always the career that you wanted to go down in life?
Yeah, I mean, I think, because you love the game, you're out, you're playing all the time with your pals and everything else, and you're fortunate enough to become a professional great, because, there's a lot of talented players that, for one reason or another, never made it professionally, and they probably had the ability to do it. So I think absolutely, to have your career in football, it doesn't get any better than that, because, had you not, I'd be out playing with my pals, and even just now, you'd still want to go and play five-a-sides and everything else because you love the game. And listen, it's the best game in the world and we all love it. Regardless of what your ability level is, everybody loves the game.
So, obviously, you mentioned then you love the game and everything. Do you remember that moment when you first signed your professional contract as a player, when that was?
Yeah, well, I signed when I was 13 as a schoolboy signing. I was supposed to sign for Dundee United, who were one of the top 4 clubs in Scotland at the time. And Sean Farland, who was the assistant manager when Glasgow Celtic were the first team to win the first British team to win the European Cup, he was a director at Dumbarton. My 2 older brothers were there, and he said to my father, and he knew my father well, he said, "Listen, young Owen would be better served with us. His brothers can keep an eye on him and everything else." And but Dumbarton were a first division club, like a part-time club. But my father said, "No, you're better there with your older brothers keeping an eye on you." And to be honest, it was the best thing that happened, Brian. When I got to 16, I was 5'4", so I was really, I was small, and I was pencil thin. I was really slim, as we know. I mean, my whole career I was pencil thin when I played, but I was really short. And at 16, and I know from the other side, when you're a manager making those decisions, if I was at Dundee United, I think they would have looked and thought, "He's a good little player, but I've got a good big player there." And I might have been released, and who knows, you might never went on to. But at Dumbarton, because it was a smaller club, I was just allowed to potter away, playing the reserves, until when I was just coming up for just over 18, I think I took a stretch to about 5'11", 5'11 and a half. And then they felt, "Oh, well, he's tall enough," and they put me into the team just thereafter that. So, but had I been at a bigger club, I might never have bounced back from that. So I was really lucky in that respect. And when the Dumbarton team started scoring some goals, did well, and obviously got subsequent moves from there.
So I've got to ask as well, what was it like in that Dumbarton Academy? What's it like when you go into training thinking this is your job now going forward?
Yeah, well, again, because my two older brothers were professionals. So even from that young early age, I mean, I was doing all the things they were doing on a Friday night, to bed early, and thinking you were a professional even at that age. But when you get the opportunity, and this is the thing that people have got to grasp, because if you think about it, when kids come on at 16, or there may be a group of 20 of them, and there may ultimately only be 2 or 3 to go into really good professional careers. So they've got to really focus and do everything they can to make sure they apply themselves right, but their ability comes through, but they're working so hard. All the good things that make you a really good professional. And so that's what I was thinking. As much as Dumbarton were a part-time club, you still, as though you were a full-time professional doing all the things you need to do to try and succeed.
And what's the feeling like then when you make your first team debut, when the manager calls you and says you're in the team this weekend?
Yeah, well, again, as a young player, and a lot of young players like this, I felt I should have been in the team long before I got my debut, because that's what young players like. They think, I'm ready to play. But actually, in my debut, my brother, Thomas, was the team captain. I was sub. I actually came on. He got took off, and I came on with him with 15 minutes left. I think it was a game against Dundee United, and Dumbarton were losing 1-0, and Dumbarton got a penalty with 2 minutes left, and all the senior players were a bit wary about taking it, and I said, I'll take it. I'll take penalties. So I came up, stepped up, managed to score the penalty. God knows what happened with the miss. But managed to go in for me, and then it just kicked on from there. I stayed in the team, scored some goals, and did relatively well.
You mentioned then coming on as a sub for your brother. How special of a moment was that, one brother passing the torch to another, so to speak? Yeah,
it was brilliant. Obviously, I then played with Thomas. I played with him at Clyde Bank as well later on after that. And it's always nice, to be part of a team special, but to have your brother on the same team as you as well and looking out for you and helping you, then of course that adds that special flavour to it. So yeah, it was lovely to do that.
So what's your favourite memories from your 3-year stretch at Dumbarton, and is there anything in particular that stands out?
Well, when I was at Dumbarton, there's a number of things. A lot of great senior players helping me, and I think that's really important to young players. You have those senior players that look out for you, want to help you, want to encourage you. And it was a good club, really good grounding. I was there from I was 13 till I was 21. But at Dumbarton, I get capped for the Republic of Ireland under 21 level, and so for a part-time player to get to play at that level, and that was terrific. It was a huge thing for my mum and my dad, who are no longer with us anymore. So it was a huge thing for them. Obviously, that I was able to play for the Republic of Ireland. So that was special.
So what was that feeling like when you go to train with all these other full-time professional players in the Ireland under 21s? Well,
it's a brilliant question, because believe it or not, my debut for Republic of Ireland under 21s was against Scotland, and it was at Easter Road, and it was the night before the national team were playing Scotland at Hampden in a European qualifier. So, but because it was a big thing, because I was in Scotland going to play, so they took me up to the main hotel to meet all the main players. So Packy Bonner, Liam Brady was there, who was my boyhood idol. Got to meet Liam Brady. He was so nice with me, Ray Houghton, boys like that. And then we played on the Tuesday night at Easter Road, and I actually scored after 90 seconds. Big Alec Micklish was playing. He was on his way back from injury, so he played as an overage player for Scotland. And I remember going by Big Alec and slotting one in to score after 90 seconds. I think Alec later signed me for Motherwell. I think that was one of the reasons, because he remembered me going by him that night. But anyway, managed to score. Although I've got to say, Scotland under 21s were an outstanding team that time. I think we eventually lost again 4-1. Robert Fleck or Gordon Jury scored a hat-trick. But it was a wonderful experience, and particularly, as I say, for a small club like Dumbarton. So great, and to have your parents there, and it was a big thing for them.
What are the celebrations like then? You're playing for the country of Ireland, but you're scoring against the country which obviously you're from and you've grown up in. Was there any hesitation on celebrating?
No, I've been really lucky. I'm very proud. I've been, brought up in the Gorbals, and proud I've been Scots and everything else, and I'm proud of my Irish heritage. So I'm really lucky, to have a foot in both camps. Very, very proud of both. And but of course, when you're on the football field, then whoever you're playing for, that's who you're there to do your best for. And that's what you've got to focus on. So, of course, when I scored to give a 1-0 lead, it's great. Ultimately, it didn't end very well, because obviously Scotland came back to score a few goals in the game. But it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
And you mentioned then, obviously, you spent some good times at Dumbarton, then you get a move to Clyde Bank. How did that move come about?
Yeah, well, there'd been a lot of interest in me from different clubs, but Dumbarton wanted to keep a hold of me. And then what happened was Dumbarton got a bit of financial trouble in respect they needed to get some money back in. And obviously I was one of their decent assets, so they agreed a fee and I moved to Clyde Bank with a big, I think there was a sale on as well. And because I did really well getting it to start at Clyde Bank, I think they went back and gave them back some more money to buy the sale out, because they realised they'd be able to move me on again for a bigger fee, which they did within 18 months. I think they sold me to Airdrie for a first division record at the time, 175,000. And so, Clyde Bank was a wonderful time, very attack-minded team, great team to play in, enjoyable football, and obviously managed to, I think I scored something like 34 goals in 68 games, or 1 goal every 2 games, and really enjoyed that.
Yeah, obviously I was just going to say then it was a prolific spell for you at Clyde Bank. Do you think that's due to the style of football that the team were playing at that time?
Yeah, well, they were a very attack-minded team, and it kind of suited my style of play, and that's an important question, because I think sometimes players do, they're suited to certain types of styles, and that's when you get the best out of them. And certainly, Clyde certainly suited the way that I like playing.
And then you make a move to a club which you ended up having a few spells for. How was that transition? Obviously, you mentioned the record as well. Was there any pressure on your shoulders when you got to the club?
Yeah, well, there was, because obviously the record saying not only that club, but for the first division, the whole division. Then of course, as a goal scorer, you're under pressure to score goals. I was lucky I scored a hat-trick in my debut, so that kind of, the fans are on side straight away, and continued scoring, many goals for Airdrie. And the following season we went to the Premier League, and that was the goal. That was the reason it bought me to help to get to the Premier League. But I started there. I think I scored 10 goals in 10 games at the end of that season. They signed me in February. But then I started the following season, and I scored 17 goals in 7 league games. I mean, they were hitting me in the shoulder, they were hitting me everywhere. They were flying. My teammates were putting them on a plate for me. And then my own goalkeeper injured me in training, and I was out. It was the only injury I ever had in my career. I was out for nearly 4 months, and came back towards the end of the season. Managed to get another 3 or 4 goals before the end of the season. Still probably wasn't quite back to the level I'd been before because of the injury, but I think I ended up scoring 20, 21 goals that season. But we got promoted, and that was in the Premier League, and that was always the goal. But a brilliant club, Airdrie. I love it. As you say, I've been back there a few times, and because it was a good club with good people, and I enjoyed my spells there.
You mentioned your hat-trick on your debut. How important was that then that it helped you settle down and then concentrate just on the football side of things?
Yeah, well, I did, because we'd signed the boy John Watson at the same time as myself. And John Watson was a very experienced player. He played at Dunfermline, 6'3", could play centre forward, but could also play centre back. So we started that together that day. So there was a lot of pressure on both of us. And I just recall him. I mean, he was fantastic in the air. I just recall whenever I ran, he just knocked things down, and that's how I managed to get my goal. So it was wonderful for both of us to hit the ground running and get a good start. But I think particularly as a striker coming into clubs, because fans, there's an expectation, we've signed a striker, he's going to score his goals, wins his games. So the earlier and the sooner you start doing that, then obviously gets the fans on side, and that always helps you.
And as someone who's experienced back both as a player and manager, there's nothing more important than for a striker than to say, I'm here now, this is my club, I'm doing my job, and then to score straight away like you did, it kind of warmed you, didn't it, to the Airdrie fans?
Yeah, it did, absolutely. And I mean, I had three and a half years there. We went to the Scottish Cup final, we lost 2-1 against Glasgow Rangers, but in turn that qualified us for the European Cup Winners' Cup. So we had a magical experience of playing against Sparta Prague over 2 legs. So it was a wonderful time at Airdrieonians. And then obviously coming to the end of that, my contract was up. I had obviously lots of interest, both in Scotland and in England. But I had a wonderful opportunity to join Bolton Wanderers, who were on the up, having been promoted from League One as it is now into the Championship, and it was just a great opportunity, a great club with some fantastic people, some great players, and an unbelievable. The fans are absolutely brilliant. They get behind the team at the Old Bundon. It was a wonderful time.
So we'll just touch on the cup final first of all at Hampden against Rangers. As a Celtic fan, going against Rangers, what was that feeling like? Yeah,
well, we played Rangers in the league, and Rangers were, they were in the middle of winning league after league. I mean, they were just an unbelievable team. McCoy, Haley, they were just some amazing players. They really did, and so we knew it was always going to be a tough game. But they were 2-0 up at half time, and we probably, if I'm honest, maybe gave them too much respect at the start of the game. And then at half time, with nothing to lose, 2-0, so we had a real go in the second half. Got a goal back with 10 minutes left, and then made a real effort to get that equaliser. Unfortunately, we didn't. So I think over the piece of the game, Rangers certainly deserved to win the game. But the good thing was we gave a really good account of ourselves in the second half, and that was really important. So it was a great experience. It'd been lovely to win it, but they were an outstanding team and the best team on the day won.
And then you mentioned obviously qualifying for the European Cup Winners' Cup against Sparta Prague. What was that experience like playing it away in Europe in a city like Prague?
Well, particularly for a provincial club that everywhere. I mean, such a small club to play in Europe and against Sparta Prague were one of the very good team in European football at that time. So that was a great experience. We lost at home, I think we lost 1-0, and certainly shouldn't have lost the game. But we went to Prague and we, I think it was it 2-1 we lost in the night, but we missed a penalty over there. We performed out of our skins, and we gave again. We came off feeling, we really contributed to the game. We had a real go in the game and held our heads high because we played very well.
And then you mentioned obviously a move to Bolton Wanderers, who win the Championship or Real Division 1, I think it was then. What was it like, the transition coming from Scotland down to England?
Yeah, again, exciting and nervous and all those things because, particularly coming down from Scotland to England, you want to do well, particularly for a club that's got aspirations. Because if you remember, I wasn't the only one that signed that summer. We'd signed Tom Wallen Thompson. Bruce had signed for $250,000 from Newcastle. Myself, Jimmy Phillips. So we'd signed, he'd signed a number. Stevie Fulton. We'd signed a number of players to help the club not only establish itself in the Championship, but give ourselves a chance to move up again to the next level, which everybody craved, the Premier League. And obviously Bolton had been through some tough times before, and they were on the way up, and it was great. It was just great to be part of it.
And I've got to ask as well, obviously, before you signed, there was the game for Bolton at Anfield in the FA Cup, the White Hart days. Did you watch that game and think you'd like to be a part of that team? Absolutely.
Well, believe it or not, I knew at that time, they'd been watching me because I knew Ian McNeil had been down at a couple of games. And I watched the game, and obviously John McGilly's one of my best pals. And when you see him in the game, and David Lee and Andy and Phil Brown, boys that became teammates of mine and friends of mine. But the performance, Lee Didsey that night was unplayable. That was, honestly, David, he was a fantastic player anyway. But when you see him that night, and it did, it wasn't, sometimes in cup games, you ride your luck and you win a game. Nothing could be further from the truth. The performance at Anfield, and I'm watching it, because everybody, I think, always roots for the underdogs. And to go to such a prestigious club that Liverpool are and give that performance from Bolton, it was amazing. It was brilliant to see, and the goals they scored. And remember, at that time, they weren't even a Championship side; they were a League One team, and it was just brilliant to see.
So then you join the club. I've got to ask, obviously you managed at the Reebok, but you played at Burnden Park. What are the main differences between the two grounds?
Well, I think the Burnden had a real feeling about it. Obviously, you remember the Canberra and when you run off the pitch, and you always remember the stories about the great Bolton fullbacks used to send the wingers right down off that Canberra onto the dirt and everything else. So I kind of you kind of find out the history of the club and the fabric and everything else about the club. And I've got to say I loved it. Burnden. When we went in with the big long corridor into the dressing rooms, and we used to be there for early in the morning, last thing at night, and there was a bit that we could section off. We'd have head tennis there as well, because everybody, the boys at that time they were at the club all day. They just loved being at the club. But the actual pitch itself, and the atmosphere, it was don't want to say an old-fashioned stadium. That's the wrong way to say it, but it probably was. But that atmosphere, that feeling, it was our stadium. The Reebok is a magnificent, still is a magnificent stadium for modern-day stadiums. But the old ones, and certainly the ones that grew up there, there was a special feeling about it.
And the reason I asked about Liverpool is because you managed to create some history on the blue side of Merseyside as well, in an FA Cup game against Everton.
Yeah, well, that season we had a very, very good team, as you know, the players we brought in, but equally the young players, big Stubbsy, Jason McAteer, Tony Kelly was there. The ability Tony Kelly had in the middle of the park, and the boys that Brown who was there, Keith Brannan getting goals, McGinn Davidson came in, Mark Seagraves, Jimmy, wonderful players, Mark Patterson, we just boys and they were real team players. If you watch that team playing, everybody covered, everybody did their work for each other, because that's as players we made sure that happened. Nobody was, everybody was pulling the weight, no matter who played. Whether you started, whether you came into the game or as a sub or whatever it is, you were ready to play your part because we knew how much you meant to everybody. And we went to Everton, as you know, in the replay, and managed to obviously score the winner to win the game 3-2. And then that's, as you know, we had a fantastic cup run. But if you think about that cup run, and even then when we lost in the quarter final at home to Oldham, I think Paddy was short with the pass back, and the big striker, you call him the big striker went through to score the goal anyway, and But we'd actually battered Oldham that game. They were a Premier League team, and we dominated that game. We probably should have won the game. But the first round, if you remember, we were actually 7 minutes from getting knocked out at home against Gretna, who were from the Unibond League. We were 2-1 down at Burnley. And anyway, I think I managed to get a late double. We won the game 3-2. Then we played Lincoln. It was a live Sky game. We won 2-0 there. Brownie scored a 25-yard. Phil Brown scored a 25-yarder into the top corner, outside diagonal, fired in. I managed to get the second one. Then obviously Everton was 0-0 at home and beat them the replay. Then obviously Arsenal, again, drawing at home, and then we're doing it hard way, taking them to replays, going away, going to Goodison, going to Highbury, doing all the hard stuff. So we did that again. And so it was a wonderful cup run. Big Stubbsy, last 16 against Aston Villa, free kick, right? To beat Aston Villa, another Premier League team. So it was a wonderful experience.
And obviously playing against them Premier League teams, the team can play without pressure, can't they? Because all the pressure is on the Evertons, the Arsenals, the Aston Villas, isn't it, to get the win?
Well, as the big teams, yes. But yeah, I agree on that, because obviously we're always the underdog. But by the same token, that team kind of always put pressure on themselves because we wanted to win. And so we did that great cup run, and with a really good team, and the league form kind of dipped a little bit with the cup runs. I don't know if that affected in terms of the league because of the cup and everything else, because we should probably have finished a bit higher up the table than we did that year. But what it did, it set us up for the following season. It set us up for looking to make sure that we could try and get promotion. And obviously we love the cup runs, as you know, because obviously with the Coca-Cola Cup run the following year to the final. So it was a good team full of special players.
And then obviously the league run cultivates the next season in that dramatic playoff final against Reading at the old Wembley. What was it like playing at the old Wembley, first of all? Well,
it was a dream come true, first and foremost. I mean, I had actually missed out in the cup final just 2 months earlier. And so, obviously, having missed out on the disappointment of that, I was trying to make sure that I get back, as we did in the training ground, worked really hard to get back to the team. And once I get in the team, make sure I stayed in, which I did. And then to have the experience I played at Wembley, as you say, it was magical. And to be able to score a goal as well, then, and the team win the game, which is more important, that was very special.
I mean, they showed the replays of the game, I think, a few weeks ago on BT Sport, and obviously Reading took the lead. Was there any point in that game where you thought, oh no, it's not happening for us, or did you always think, get one back, keep going?
No, I think when it went 2-0, Reading missed a penalty, if you remember. Now, had that one in to make it 3-0, I think that would have been a long, long way back to get back in the game. I would never say never with the team we had, because they were, as well as the ability with the team of battlers and boys that were prepared to work really hard. But when they missed the penalty at 2-0, I think we all realised, right, we just need to get the next goal. And in fairness to Bruce Rioch, at half-time, he made changes, and I think he took Neil Mack off in the midfield, and he ended up going 4-2-4. John McGinley was wide right, I was wide left, and Fabian and Mixu went through the middle. So, I mean, you had 4 centre-forwards in the pitch, all playing up in the forward areas, but he knew that McGinley could, terrific cross of the ball, and obviously I played wide left before as well, and could do that job. And it was just, it was ways of attack in the second half. But with some chances, we never get a goal. But as soon as we obviously get the first goal back, I was fortunate to get a good header at the back post. I think we knew then, when it got to 2-1, we knew we were going to go on and win that game. And got 4-2 up, and then allowed them a third one to make it a little bit tense at the end up. But there's no doubt we were worthy winners. We were outstanding, after a slow start in the game, I have to say. Reading played to obviously give them credit. But once we got up and at it, then there's no doubt we were worthy winners.
And I've got to ask as well, that was the first time that Bolton had been in the top flight then for 15 years. Did you know when you were back before the game? Did you feel any pressure from the town of Bolton itself?
Yeah, I think if it's pressure, if that's a word that we use, we're kind of used to it in football. But I think we felt that we wanted to, as much as go and win a game. We knew we wanted to do a bit for the fans, get the fans excited. The fans have been wonderful on that. As we kind of to progress, the fans were with us every step of the way, and we wanted to give them something to shout about when we got to Wembley to be winners, and to be able to do that. And of course, it was a special feeling for everybody, and we all felt part of it.
And I'd be remiss of me to not mention Bolton without mentioning two people who you were close to then. First of all, Bruce Rioch. What was Bruce like as a manager?
Yeah, Bruce was an outstanding manager. Football knowledge, second to none. Him and I obviously we'd obviously had one or two run-ins. That was natural, just because different types of personalities. But football knowledge was outstanding. He did an amazing job at Bolton Wanderers. So much so, obviously, that's why he got the Arsenal job. But he knew his players. He knew how he played a very attacking brand of football. And huge respect.
And then the second person, Mr. Bolton Wanderers, he was on the pitch for you all at full time, the late great Nat Lofthouse.
Yeah.
What were your memories of Nat from your playing time at Bolton?
I was very fortunate to be with Nat many, many times. Wonderful man. Loved this club, and he was just a fantastic. He was. It's great to be talented in what you do. That's nice, but it's more important you're a nice man. And Nat Lofthouse was an outstanding man, an absolute gentleman. Somebody I had an awful lot of time for, and it was a sad loss for everyone.
And obviously, you'll have seen the statue. Do you think that was a fitting tribute to the man to have a statue outside of the stadium that is Bolton's ground?
Absolutely. Very, very, very fitting. And as I said before, wonderful man, and loved this club. I mean, it was perfect.
I mean, we'll touch on the FA Cup run and everything first of all, but we have the game against Chelsea, the home game live on Sky, and we did the tribute for him on Sky. Just how proud were you to be Bolton manager at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I was always proud to be Bolton manager at any point. It's a wonderful club with great people and a great set of fans. And of course, for the tribute, and the fans were amazing for that. Obviously, the result didn't go well for us, but playing against a quality team, we'd have loved to have given them a smile on his face at being able to win a game against a top opponent. But I think the tribute from the fans was amazing, and it kind of summed up the Bolton fans and the love they had for such a fantastic man.
And obviously winning promotion on that pitch at Wembley as well. We saw the pictures of you and John McGinley and everything. We know you don't drink, so I'm guessing you had a few Iron Brew that night, didn't you?
Yeah, we had a few, whatever it was, Iron Brew, Coca-Cola, as you mentioned it. And there's always, I try to make sure the rest of them go home safe and sound. So when we normally went out, then obviously I would make sure I took in and about. I would take the car and make sure they go home all right. But there's no doubt the boys were celebrating. We knew how to play, but we knew how to spend time together and enjoy each other's company as well. So it was a wonderful, wonderful occasion. There's no doubt about it.
So then after that, obviously Bolton are in the Premiership, but you get a move to Dundee United. How did that move come about from leaving Bolton? Yeah,
very simply. I mean, I don't ever wanted to leave. I just wanted to play. I just, I love the game of football, and I think I started one or two games, and I was on the bench the rest in the Premier League, and I just wanted to play. And if I'm honest, I understand that. I mean, with some really good players. And Colin Todd and Roy McFarlane were the managers at the time, and I was very honest. I spoke to him. I said, "Listen, if you don't see me starting a lot of games, I understand that. I have no problem with that. But I just need you to be honest with me and tell me if you think that it's going to be, you're sitting on the bench, what have you. Then I've got to say, I'm not 20 or 21. I was a decent age. I just want to go and play. I love the game, but I want to start games. I want to score goals. And if I'm sitting on a bench, I'm not going to do that." So they were very honest with me. They said, "No, you're obviously part of our plans, but we can't say that you're going to be starting games more often. If it's everybody's fit just now, the likelihood is you'll be on the bench." So they were honest. I had no problem with that. That was fine. So I just said, "Well, listen, maybe it's better then I go and get a chance to play somewhere." So it was, it was a wrench to leave Bolton, absolutely. But I just wanted to play, and that's what you do for the love of the game.
And obviously Dundee United, you mentioned about what could have been if you'd have joined there as a young 16-year-old, you're now there as a professional. What was that feeling like going back to Dundee United?
Yeah, well, I knew a lot of the people there. I knew the number of players from Glasgow, boys that I grew up with. And Dundee United had lost their place in the Premier League and they needed to get back up. And they had some wonderful players. And obviously looking to sign the likes of myself to help take them back up. And again, it couldn't have worked out any better because I scored the winning goal in the playoff final. And again, so in 2 consecutive years, obviously, having done it for Bolton and being a part of that team, I was able to be part of the Dundee United team and fortunately scored the winning goal that took them back into the Premier League in the playoff final. So it was, it was great from that respect.
So I've got to ask, I'll put you on a difficult spot here. Which of the playoff final games did you enjoy the most? The English one with Bolton or the Scottish one with Dundee United?
Well, I think any experience you have in football is special, particularly scoring goals and being part of a winning team. Particularly for those prestigious moments. But listen, I've got to say, to score, because I think even growing up in Scotland, every footballer's dream is to play at Wembley. So to play in a packed house at Wembley, to be 2-0 down and come back in a team to win that game and manage to, the most important thing was winning the game. But to be able to play a part and score a goal and have an assist or whatever, and some of the other goals, then that was great. So if I had to pick one, I need to pick Wembley against Reading.
And then obviously a successful spell at Dundee United gives you a chance to go, like you said, with your old mate Alex Micklish, who signs for Motherwell. How was that feeling when you heard Alex Micklish wanted to sign you?
Yeah, it was great because obviously he was somebody I'd admired as a player. He had a fantastic career. He was now starting his career in management. He was a young manager, somebody you could relate to. And I liked him as a man. And the other thing was it allowed me, Motherwell's 20 minutes from my home in Glasgow. So whereas at Dundee United you had to live in Dundee, which was like an hour and a half away. So now I was back home, as I said, how big my family is, close family. So it gives you the opportunity to be back. And Motherwell, I loved my time at Motherwell. Scored a lot of goals, did very well, and then enjoyed myself.
So if you had to pick any memories, highlights from your time at Motherwell, what would it be?
Well, I think there was a number of them, but I think the one that stands out was, we mentioned before about that Rangers team, how good they were. So, but when I went to Motherwell, they were bottom of the league. That was one of the reasons for signing me, try and score some goals to keep them in the Premier League. And we went to Ibrox on the May bank holiday. It's only 2 games of the season left for us at Motherwell. And we had to, we needed 4 points from our last 2 games to stay out of the playoff positions at the bottom. And obviously one of them was against Rangers. And Rangers, if they beat us that day, they'd won the 9 in a row, which is a huge thing in Scotland, as you know. So we went there having to get something to stay out of these playoff positions. And Alec had instilled a great belief in us. We picked up we were actually playing well. We moved up off the bottom. We were picking up a few wins here and there. So there was an opportunity to try and create a big shock. Rangers had spent a lot of money on hospitality to bring all their ex-players back that played the 9 in a row. Cut long story short, it was live on Sky, and we went out and won the game 2-0, and I managed to score both goals. So that was a huge thing for Motherwell, and it was a huge thing obviously in Scotland as well. Rangers subsequently 3 days later went on to win the 9 in a row against Dundee United. But the important thing was for us because it allowed us 3 points to get out of those playoff positions and keep us safe in the league.
I know it delayed the inevitable, but I'm guessing a lot of Celtic fans probably thanked you for that moment on Sky where you scored 2 against.
I think, yeah, you're right. I only delayed the inevitable, but I think being as they say, Celtic minded, and of course a lot of your friends will say, "Oh, well done." But the Rangers team, they were an outstanding team. They were always going to go, and they had a couple of games to go. They were always going to win up with the quality they had.
So what's that feeling like then, keeping Motherwell in the league? Because Motherwell are a big team in Scotland, aren't they?
Yeah, it was huge. It was, again, being part of that team. It was great to be able to do that, and really enjoyed it.
And then obviously you had spells at Dunfermline and Ross County on loan as well. What were your experiences like on them 2 clubs?
Yeah, I moved a number of times because I just wanted to play. If I found myself, as when I went to Dunfermline, we were in the Premier League, and I was obviously getting on a few years, whatever age I was, I found myself on the bench and I wanted to play. So subsequently went to Ross County on loan, and then back to Airdrie again, and Falkirk, and finished my career at a good age, scoring some goals, and really enjoyed the playing side. I think I finished with something like 297 goals, including cups, no league and cups. So I really enjoyed it. I was really lucky to have my career in football. Very, very blessed.
And then obviously you mentioned going back to Airdrie, you scored in the Challenge Cup final as well, but Airdrie Onions, as it was known then, unfortunately liquidated in 2002. What was that feeling like when that club went under? Yeah,
it wasn't nice because obviously, they were, when I came back the second time, they were already in liquidation, and we were signing a month-to-month contract to try and, before a new owner was coming in. That never transpired, but you're right, we did very well, that team. And obviously, as you say, we the club, we lost the club, whatever you want to call it, and then it kind of reformed as Dundee United. So of course it wasn't nice when that happens to anybody, particularly you always feel for the fans, because the fans are the one that without fans you don't have a club, and that's so that's always the feeling.
And at Falkirk, it's kind of when you first got your first taste of coaching as well with John Hughes. What was that moment like when we said want you to help out on the coaching staff for a bit?
Yeah, well, from Airdrie, I'd been player coach at Airdrie for a year and a half, so I was learning the coaching side while I was still playing. And the same, me and Yogi went into Falkirk as player coaches for Ian McCall, who'd been my manager at Airdrie. And then Ian, obviously, because we were doing quite well, he got the job at Dundee United, and they asked myself and Yogi to take over as player co-managers, which we did. So we took over, we were a point in front, we ended up winning the league by 9 points. I think I ended up the top scorer in the league that year. I managed to win the couple of trophies for doing well as a player and everything else. But it was just it was like a fairy tale season, towards the end of your career, and I loved every moment of it. And obviously winning the league as co-managers was brilliant.
So I've got to ask as well, obviously your playing career coming to a close. When did you make that decision that you was going to retire as a professional player? Because it's the hardest decision, isn't it, to make?
Yeah, to stop playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when as you get a bit older, then you realise, maybe a year ago I'd have got to that ball and maybe scored that. So I think if we're honest with ourselves, we'll all realise when it's coming to an end at the level you've played at. And then that's when I get a call from Jeff Brown about whether I'm interested in the St Johnstone job. So I went to meet him, struck it off great with him. He knew my older brother, Thomas, he'd played for him. And he gave me a great opportunity. He was a wonderful chairman, gave me an opportunity to come into management in my own right. And I loved every moment of it.
I've got to ask you a story about this interview as well. I believe there was something involving a cup of tea and some gravy mix up there.
Yeah, well, that's actually what happened. He came to see me, and I was trying to make a good impression. And as you know, I don't drink, but I like my cups of tea. And I said to him, "Would you like a tea or coffee?" And he said, "I'd love a coffee." And I thought, goodness. So I'm looking about for the coffee. I eventually find it, making the tea and coffee, milk and sugar. We sat for over an hour. Couldn't win any better. But I'd had to ask Kerry, the wife, to go out because it was raining, so we had a bit of quiet. So Kerry came back in, and it'd been raining. The rain was still running down her face and all that. And she said, "How did it go?" I says, "Kerry, it went great." I says, "The only thing was, he threw me at the start." I said, because I asked him, "Do you want a tea or coffee?" He asked for a coffee. I said, "I couldn't find the coffee," but I eventually found it. And she says, "We don't have coffee." I says, "Yeah, we do." She says, "That's Bristol gravy, you clown." So I made him a cup of Bristol gravy with milk and sugar. So anyway, I phoned him to apologise. And while I was on the phone, he said, "Listen, yeah, there was a funny taste of it, but I want to give you the job anyway." So there was a method in my madness.
So I've got to ask as well, obviously, somebody who you were assistant to at Airdrie, Sandy Stewart, became your assistant at St Johnstone, and obviously Sandy's followed you to your other clubs as well. What is it about your relationship with Sandy Stewart that seems to work so well?
Well, he's a terrific coach. He's an SFA staff coach. He knows the game inside out. He has his own opinion, so he might see something different and say, as assistant managers do, "Listen, have you thought about this?" And as a manager, it gives you something to think about. Ultimately, as a manager, as you know, the ultimate responsibility falls on us, and we have to make that decision. But I think it's important you have, people, staff like that give you an input, and they have a knowledge, and they have their own ideas in the game as well. So yeah, so we've always worked well together.
And then obviously you're a manager of your own right at St Johnstone. What was it like going into training for the first day as a full-time manager?
Well, again, because I was a relatively young manager, then the number of those players I knew, I'd played with as a teammate, never mind as a manager. So it's just understanding, where the line is. But ultimately, as everything comes down to trying to get the best out of the players, trying to build a good team. And we did. We had a very, very good team at St Johnstone. So much so that having done well, then obviously I got the opportunity at Burnley because of how well I'd done at St Johnstone.
And obviously some highlights of St Johnstone have just got me. You beat Rangers for the first time in 35 years in a League Cup game. What was that like, managing against unbeaten Rangers? Yeah,
well, we went down there. It was at Ibrox again, quarter-final of the Cup. And again, we were a first division team, a championship team. So, I think everybody expected us to lose by a number of goals. But we had a belief about us. We had some good players. And when we won the game 2-0, Stevie Milne, I think, scored both goals. And fully deserved it. We were the better team on the night. Sometimes I've said before, you can be lucky, and not that night. We were the better team that night. And it was a huge shock, a huge upset. But it took us to the semi-finals of the cup competition.
And what was that semi-finals like against Hibs as well? Again, another Premiership team.
It was, and again, I actually thought we still won that game. We lost after extra time. The game was at Tynecastle, but we had enough chances to win that game, and it just wasn't to be on the night. And Hibs went to the final, but we performed admirably. And on another day, we could easily have found ourselves in the cup final.
And then obviously that's the Scottish League Cup. You had another good spell in the Scottish FA Cup as it was. And you beat two of your old teams as well in Falkirk and Motherwell to get to Hampden in the semis. What was that cup run like for yourself?
Again, yeah, I mean, I've always, as a player, manager, always loved the cup competitions. And of course, we were doing it and played very well. And you're right, even in the final, the semi-final, sorry, we lost narrowly to Celtic 2-1. They went one up, we got an equaliser. Then I think they got a debatable penalty, but they beat us 2-1. And but we ran them very, very close. So we knew we had a good team. We also found ourselves in the January, we were second place in the league, but we were 15 points behind our old friends I mentioned earlier, Gretna, who had now come up through the leagues in Scotland. They'd spent a lot of money, they're throwing a lot of money at it. And but from that, from January 15 points behind, we actually came to the last day of the season. And if we won and Gretna didn't win, then we were promoted, we were champions. And our game kicked off early at Hamilton. On the AstroTurf, Hamilton were unbeaten all year on their AstroTurf, the home pitch. We beat them 3-2, but our game finished 6 minutes early. Well, sorry, our game finished, but Ross County were playing Gretna at Ross County. Ross County needed to win to stay in the league, and Gretna needed to win to get promoted. And it was 0-0, and they were 6 minutes behind us. Their game had been delayed. So we had to wait. If it finished as it was 0-0, we were champions. And the 4th minute of injury time, Ross County had a corner and put everybody in because they had to win. A draw was no good to them. And the corner got kind of half cleared. And Gretna had a 3-on-1. And when it got squared, the striker, James Grady, I think he got a toe poke on it. And it trundled in off the post. And Gretna won the game 1-0. So it was a very cruel way to finish the season for us, sitting in the dressing room, listening to the radio, waiting on the result. But that's the nature of football. There's lots of highs, lots of lows. But what we did, we picked ourselves up and, we get ready to go for the following season. And that's obviously when I got the opportunity to be the Burnley manager.
I've got to ask as well, that kind of moment, obviously we're seeing now how big social media is. So something's going to happen straight away. Like, for example, I'll use the Liverpool example on Thursday. It was all there. We all knew on social media what was happening. But back then it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. What was that feeling like, getting around a radio or a TV trying to find out what's going on?
Well, I think we brought them off the pitch and we all went into the away dressing room. And Stevie Milne was injured, the boy that scored the 2 goals, so he wasn't playing that day. So he had the radio up the corner and he said, Gaffer, it's still 0-0, there's 4 minutes left. So we were all actually, just waiting, and the radio commentaries on, we're all listening to it. As I said, it was agonising because, you got to, I think it was like something like 90 seconds left in the game, and the corner, and you hear Ross County's got a corner, and I'm thinking, right, just keep it in the corner, but they had to win the game. So they went to try and score, and obviously it's backfired on them, and ultimately we suffered through it.
And then you mentioned obviously interest from Burnley in the Championship as it is, but no one else. Was you surprised at first to learn that Burnley were interested in you, considering the stature of the club that Burnley were at that time?
Well, I think as a young manager, when you're doing well and you're and people are kind of making others aware of it, then of course then you're flattered when there's any interest, particularly as you say, like a prestigious club like that, a one with fantastic history and tradition. So of course, when then they ask for the opportunity to speak, then of course you want to go and make a good impression. Now, I think I wasn't the only one they spoke to. There was a number of candidates. So, but it gives you a chance and opportunity to impress what you're about and what you are. When I met with Brendan Flood, I think Brendan was a real one for really pushing for me and gave me a great opportunity at a wonderful club, and everybody knows the success we had.
And obviously there was a recommendation from your old boss at Motherwell, Alex Micklish. Just how touching was that for you to have Alex pushing you to get this job? Yeah,
well, that was great because he was actually the Scotland manager at the time, and he was involved in a qualifier on that day. I think Scotland were playing Italy with a chance to get to the Euros, and Alex actually took the time in the preparation of the game to phone Brendan Flood and say, listen, just told him about me, what his opinion was, what he thought of me, and I think that helped get it over the line, if I'm honest. So I've got a lot to thank Alex for.
And I'm guessing, did Alex send you a message of congratulations after?
Yeah, he did, and then after that, he got the Birmingham job. We ended up competing against each other just over a year later in the Premier League. So it's amazing how things work out. But no, he was Alex. He was great for me, Alex Micklish, he really was.
And obviously someone else who went to bat for you was Phil Gartside, who was chairman at Bolton at that time. And I believe that he was a contender for the Bolton job if Gary Megson didn't get it. So was Phil someone who you knew beforehand?
Yeah, Phil had been a director at the club when I was there as a player. I think what Phil had said was that we obviously, as you do with ex-players, we always kept an eye on Owen. But we think, maybe it was just, too big a step. We were obviously Bolton won the Premier League at the time. And he says, well, he was certainly one that we thought of. And he just explained, again, what he thought and everything else. So it's always nice, when people vouch for you. And but ultimately, you've got to go in and you've got to be able to hit the ground running and do well. I actually think we going back to hit the ground running, going back to when I actually signed for Bolton, my debut was against Stoke City. And obviously when you come in as a striker, spend a lot of money on, the fans are, right? And I remember in the first half, a corner came in and I missed an absolute sitter from a yard out. Somebody flicked on near post and the ball, I went to swing at it and threw my legs. And I can imagine the Bolton fans saying, well, what have we signed here? He's missed an absolute sitter. But as it happens, I think I ended up scoring a wonderful volley in the second half. I think we drew one each with Stoke City. I scored a beautiful volley in the second half. And of course, then the fans are. So, but back to the same thing, player management. It's important that you try and hit the ground running and do well.
And obviously, what was the experience like, obviously, moving back again to the northwest of England? What was the main differences in the facilities at St Johnstone and the facilities at Burnley?
Yeah, well, St Johnstone had a lovely stadium. St Johnstone was an all-seater stadium, lovely stadium, with a little training ground. Not as expansive as obviously Burnley had a beautiful training pitch at Gawthorpe. But at the time we changed at the stadium and we drove to Gawthorpe. It was a bit like when I played at Bolton. We used to, if you remember, we used to change at London and then travel to whether it was Hall Sweet Factory for training or to Exton, which latterly became the training ground. So it was like that, but wonderful, training field, beautiful pitch for getting your preparation done, lovely stadium, and the stadium at Turf Moor, when it's packed out, because it still get that feel of as much as a couple of new stands, it still get the feeling of that kind of old-fashioned bit that we had. And so again, the fans, they really get behind the team, they really do. And we managed to build it into a fortress that nobody wanted to come and play there because we had an outstanding home record.
I've got to ask you as well about a player who was reaching the end of his career at the time at Burnley, but he's someone who credited you with prolonging his career, and that was Andrew Cole. What was it like to work with someone who was a treble winner in '99?
Yeah, he was, and he was an outstanding player, and it was brilliant for me. What happened was our top striker, Andy Gray, Charlton had come in for Andy Gray, and in the January window, and they ended up paying £1.5 million plus £500,000, £2 million, including the add-ons. But I was able to go to Sunderland and get Andrew Cole on loan for the same salary as Andy Gray had been earning, and we still had the money in the bank to use to build the team in the summer. And Cole came in, and I've got to tell you, he was outstanding. I mean, the way he trained, he still passed the ball like a Champions League player. He had really good, professionalism about him. And what happened was that made the training better. He improved the training, and on the field, I mean, he scored one of the best hat tricks I've ever seen in my life. We were 2-0 down at Queen's Park Rangers, and in the first half, and he scored one just before half time. And then in the second half, he scored two wonderful goals. It was a perfect hat trick. I think it was a right foot, left foot, and a header. Doesn't get any better than that. And Big Addy, I can buy you the other one, managed to win the game 4-2. But Coley's hat trick was outstanding, and to give the young players, young Jay Rodriguez and the boys that were coming through, to see somebody like that, a role model, somebody being at the very top of the game and playing the trade, but still having the same attitude, the same enthusiasm, the same desire. It was brilliant, and I loved working with them. I really did.
And as somebody, he played for Blackburn obviously as well, but the Burnley fans really seemed to take to him, didn't they, during his spell at Turf Moor?
Yeah, again, that's the thing. Having been a Bolton player and loved my time and everything at Bolton, I actually wasn't really aware of the rivalry between Burnley and Blackburn before I came down, because having been in Bolton, as much as we local derbies, there wasn't that. So somebody mentioned that, he'd been at Blackburn. I thought, well, what difference does that make? Not understanding, but I think when he went in, the fans could see he was a quality player. They could see he was trying his hardest. They could see he could score goals. And I think when you do that, fans will always accept. As long as they know you're working your hardest, the fans will always accept you.
So obviously you get to your first full season in the Championship, which will be a successful one. But again, a cup competition seems to bring success for you. I'll talk to you about that night in November in Stamford Bridge. Not many teams go to Chelsea and beat them on their own team, especially a team from a lower league. How special was that night for you, especially when it got to penalties?
Yeah, well, you're right. I think prior to that, Chelsea lost something like one game in '93 at home. It was, or whatever it was just an unbelievable record. Whatever record they had, it was incredible. So they'd been a lot of games and not lost many at home. But we had a real belief about this. We knew we could play. And I remember saying before the game, listen, if we play at our very best and Chelsea play at their very best, then Chelsea will win the game. But if we play our best and Chelsea don't, then we have a chance. And that's what happened. We were at our best, the boys. We actually went down to 10 men in that game as well. So it was incredible. The boys they worked their socks off and they were outstanding. And when it gets to penalties, we had a fantastic goalkeeper, as you know, Big Brian Jensen, and the boys stuck to their task. They did their job.
And then beating Arsenal again in the next round as well, like another team who you beat with Bolton, and then you beat them again as a manager. Must be a pain in the side for Arsenal.
Yeah, well, we managed to we quarter-final home with Kevin McDonald, who's obviously a fantastic midfielder. I signed Kevin, I think it was £250,000 from Dundee, but Kevin was outstanding tonight, scored 2 wonderful goals, and of course it was a brilliant cup run that took us to the semis against Tottenham Hotspur.
How unlucky were you that day? I remember watching it as a young lad on TV and thinking, you need so nearly won that as well, didn't you? I think it was the last couple of minutes.
Well, the thing about it is, I mean, the League Cup in England's the only competition that away goals don't count until after extra time. So we had lost the first game 4-1 at White Hart Lane. We beat them 3-0 over 90 minutes. So we should have been in the final on away goals. But unfortunately, that's not the rules with the League Cup. And Pavlyuchenko scored one with 90 seconds of extra time left, and we just committed everybody forward, then obviously try to get the next goal. And so it was a cruel way to lose, but it showed we had a very good team, and a team that we felt, if we got up and running again, because we dipped a little bit of league form, if we picked ourselves up again, we could go and get promotion, and that's what we did.
I was going to ask then, obviously a cup run like that for a manager, what's it like getting the players motivated? Obviously you're playing Chelsea and Arsenal, and then no disrespect, you're probably going to teams like Huddersfield and other teams in the Championship. How difficult is it to motivate players from one high to the next?
No, I get that. Yeah, absolutely, because it's a valid point. But my point to the players was, listen, if you've got aspirations want to play those teams week in, week out, the only way you do it is by beating the teams in your league and earning the right. Nobody will ever hand it to you. You've got to go and earn it. So that's what we did. We knuckled down, and obviously went, as you say, went to the playoffs again and managed to do it.
I've got to ask as well, obviously you win your semi-finals and get to Wembley. How different is Wembley week on a playoff final as a manager compared to a player?
Yeah, well, it's completely different, because as a player you know that if you play well the manager's going to pick you. As a manager you're responsible not only for a team, a club, you're responsible for a town and everything that goes with it, and cities and whatever you're in charge of. So it's a huge responsibility. And we were fortunate because we had about nearly 2 weeks to prepare, and we needed that, because after the semi-final, second leg at Reading, who were our opponents in the semi-final playoff, the players were spent. They'd already played 60 games that season. We needed to find a way to get the energy back, get a smile back. So what we did we actually went back to the place that we prepared for the playoff final as players at Bolton. Went back to Barrington's at Valdelobo in Portugal. 4 or 5 days in the sun, we got the training back, the zip was back, and we went into the game, we felt really confident against Sheffield United that we could win this game.
And then Wade Elliott, obviously, what a goal that was as well. A goal worthy of winning any game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up right. It was a goal fit to win any game, particularly a game of the magnitude of the playoff final. Just a wonderful, wonderful goal, and a special player. But fully deserved it. We were the better team in the day, and we certainly deserved to win the game.
What's it like then? Obviously, it's the new Wembley compared to the old Wembley. What's it like looking at the side and seeing thousands and thousands of claret and blue all there cheering on your boys to get promotion?
It was incredible, because the population of Burnley, the actual town's like just over 60,000. Then you've got the outlying areas, but we'd nearly 40,000 fans there, and if they gave us more tickets, we'd have sold them as well. It was incredible. They really come out and support their team. They really do. And the atmosphere was amazing. I mean, I've been really, really lucky to have had that experience at the old Wembley, and obviously with the new Wembley. It was an amazing experience.
I've got to ask as well, we see like the fans are the lifeblood of the club. How many times have you stopped in the supermarkets and stuff a week leading up to the final saying, please win this, please take us up?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it'd been such a long time since Burnley. When you think about all the North West clubs, they'd all been top level clubs for the most of their history, and Burnley had been away a long time from the top level. So it was it was a huge thing to try and get back to that level, and obviously, fortunately, we were able to do it.
I've got to ask, we asked about the celebrations of winning as a player. What was it like celebrating the manager and with your playing staff at full time when that was still going?
It was my first thoughts actually at full time whistle was for Kevin Blackwell as a losing manager, because I know those big moments, when they go your way they're great, but I've been on the other side of those moments as well, and it's not. So I want to make sure that Kevin was okay, which I did, and then having done that, then you're able to go and celebrate, because I think it's very important that you're respectful and courteous of your opponent, which it was, and we were, and then you're able to go and celebrate with your own squad and everything else, and it was amazing. It really was. Everybody, it was such a tight-knit group, very much a family club, and everybody loved it.
I've got to ask, what was that moment like when you get to Burnley Town Hall afterwards? You've done the open top bus celebration, and all the town of Burnley basically about to celebrate the club getting in the top flight. It
was amazing. It wasn't just the town of Burnley; it was everywhere. I mean, we were actually lucky to get to the town hall because there was that many people. It was truly amazing. It really was. And what it does, it shows you, what it means to the town and the fans when you have things like that. And it was unbelievable.
And then obviously, because you're successful, means other clubs are looking at you as a young manager, and the club you support, Celtic, at that time were really, really interested in your services. What made you decide to stay at Burnley? Was it the fact that you got promoted but just thought, I want to take this team in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit in that. I think ultimately I kind of had to take the emotion out of it. And from a football point of view, we were in the best league in the world. We were going to compete against your Man United, your Chelseas. We love the North West anyway, the area that we're in, and so and the family were happy and everything else. So that had a lot to do with it, and ultimately that's what it is. So it was a challenge to stand toe to toe with the big boys and see how you could do.
I mean, obviously, looking back on it now, was there a part of it for I do wish I would have taken that job? Is there any part of you that thinks, I do wish I did manage Celtic?
Yeah, I think ultimately in football, when you're in anything in life, you make decisions. Once you've made them, that's it. There's no point looking and saying, what ifs, what's that? The bottom line is whatever happens, and then you're ready to deal with what's in front of you. That's the way you look at it.
And then obviously you get to the Premier League, and then that first home game at Turf Moor brings the champions to Turf Moor, which is Manchester United. And what an atmosphere, what a day. And Robbie Blake, what a goal that was to win that game. Yeah, it was. I mean, I think... as you say, the champions, Manchester United, come in and you're thinking, we need to get up and running. It's going to be such a difficult game. But to go and get 3 points, and in the manner we did with the quality of the goal, then that gives real confidence to players that, if we can beat Man United, we can beat anybody. And of course, so that was a crucial 3 points for us, and it really got us up and running. I've got to ask, what was it like going up head to head against someone like Sir Alex Ferguson? Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I mean, he'd always been really good to me anyway, Sir Alex. He did obviously the deal when he helped me to sign for us Eagles, and he'd always kept in touch and sent me nice messages and everything else. So, but it was also, to one of the best managers ever in world football, to be able to compete against him on a level playing field, then of course that's a special experience. So, obviously Sir Alex is known for, obviously his love of wine. Did he get you an iron brew ready after that game? Yeah, well, obviously we were at home. He actually sent me a message before that to say, make sure you have a couple of nice bottles of red wine for me and my staff. And I, being teetotal, I'd asked Dan Bentley to go and help me out. So he did, and he brought a couple of bottles of red wine. And only he was there, Darren was there. I actually went to put both of them in the fridge. He says, no, they've got to breathe at room temperature.
So only he was there. But anyway, they must have, Sir Alex and the staff, they finished them, so there must have been decent bottles of wine anyway. So, but I mean, after the game, and this is the thing about him, win, lose or draw, he stayed out, must have stayed for an hour after the game, chatting away about everything. And it wasn't, oh, we lost the game, we're just going to scurry out here. Real class about him, genuine class, Sir Alex.
And obviously, Burnley, you win your first 4 Premier League home games at Turf Moor, but lose the first 5 away games. What was the difference between the home atmosphere and then obviously the games away from home, which just didn't seem to work?
Yeah, I think the team that we had to play in a certain way. We had to play in the front foot, and some of the away games, they were tough games. I think we've been at Chelsea, we've been at Tottenham Hotspur. Some tough ties in there. And equally, you're playing against brilliant opponents. But what we had to make sure was that the players still had that belief that we're not going to kind of shut up shop, because then all of a sudden they say, they not believe us, they don't think we can win. So we went out with the same mentality. Could have won 1 or 2 points in the away games, maybe, but equally we're playing against some good opponents. But the good thing was we were still making sure, as you mentioned 4, winning the home games. I mean, I think from my 10 games at home in the Premier League, we won 5, drew 4, and we only lost 1. And the one we lost, actually, Brian Jensen fell over the ball in his goal line and hurt his ankle, and Hugo Rodallega tapped in. We probably wouldn't have lost that game either. So we obviously had Burnley doing very well, in a good position in the Premier League, because we had the lowest budget ever in the Premier League. So we were performing way above where we should be.
Yeah, and obviously you had some good games as well. I remember one, obviously being a Bolton fan, I remember the game at Turf Moor, which was a draw, but it seemed like even the Bolton fans were on your side that day. Because
I remember that game. It was a 1-1 draw on Boxing Day, if my memory serves me right. And it was a fantastic atmosphere. I mean, the Bolton fans are always, and that's what made it special, because the Burnley fans are outstanding, as are the Bolton fans. And when you had the two of them together in that stadium, it was I remember that game. It was an amazing atmosphere. It really was. And the game obviously finished 1-1. But again, it could have went either way. Both teams were bang at it.
And then obviously the reason I mentioned that game is right at the end of the year, Gary Megson, who was manager that day, does unfortunately lose his job. Bolton are 18th, Burnley are above the relegation zone. It's after an FA Cup game against MK Dons. You say you're staying as manager at Burnley, but then all of a sudden it's announced you're going to be joining Bolton. How hard was it to leave Burnley?
Yeah,
and why did you choose Bolton?
Yeah, I always said when I came down to Burnley, I said to Brendan, there's only probably 2 teams that would never turn my head. Coming in and won Glasgow Celtic, obviously the opportunity, and won Bolton, because I played at Bolton and the affiliation I had and everything else. And so, of course, it was a huge wrench to leave. I mean, we loved everything we'd done. And again, I mean, there's a number of reasons for that. I don't really want to go into them because you're just going over old stuff. But ultimately, it happened. But it's a wonderful club with a great set of fans. The town, I mean, all you see is Burnley fans, similar to Bolton. They just love their club. But obviously, as you say, when I went into Bolton on the bottom 3 and in relegation trouble. And we managed to keep them on with 9 points to spare, having spent no money.
I mean, obviously, your first press conference and be asked for reasons why, as you said, looking at the facilities at the time, Bolton were 10 years ahead of Burnley. Looking back, though... Yeah,
without going over all stuff, the bottom line is, what happened, and we've moved on. So, but the important thing was coming into Bolton was to get the team up and running. That's what was important, to get the team away from danger, because they were in relegation trouble. And that's what we did. I got Stuart Holden on a Bosman from Houston Dynamo. I got Jack Wilshere in on loan from Arsenal. I got Vladimir Weiss on loan from Manchester City. And so what we said, it's of no relevance, no importance. The important thing was to get the team up and running, which we did, and obviously managed to get them 9. Well, I think we finished 9 points clear at the bottom 3.
So obviously, we were just talking about your first season at Bolton. You managed to keep the club up in Premier League. That was a proud moment for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you obviously coming in when the team's down at the bottom and one of the favourites for relegation, and the fact that we didn't have any money to spend, we had to go and get loan players, but the quality of the players we brought, Vladimir Weiss did a great job. Jack Wilshere was outstanding. Stuart Holden. Listen, Stuart Holden, had he not picked up his injury, for me, would have been one of the best midfielders in the Premier League. He was outstanding, as we know. Everybody still thinks so highly of him because of the quality he brought. So yeah, I was delighted that we'd retained our Premier League status, and then we we're looking forward, obviously, to the next season.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned Stuart Holden, and obviously the next season, 10-11, he found an outstanding partnership, didn't he, with Fabrice Muamba in that midfield?
Yeah, they were outstanding because they had a perfect balance. I mean, Fabrice would cover the ground across the field, and he was great intercepting and reading the game. Fabrice was very clever in that respect, and Stuart was a box to box. I mean, Stuart was, when you looked at his stats after the game, out with his quality in the ball. I mean, Stuart was like 12.5 to 13 kilometres every game, but it wasn't just running for running's sake. There was an end product to it. It was quality, because sometimes players can do a lot of running about, but there's no end product. Stuart had a bit of everything, and him and Fabrice, they were an outstanding partnership. They understood their roles and knew what was required of them, and they very much complemented each other.
And then obviously in that pre-season you mentioned loans again. There was two players, one was a loan, one was permanent for Real Madrid, Marcos Alonso and Rodrigo. What was it like working with them two at the start of their careers?
Well, it was terrific. I mean, as you know, I've always loved the young players, and we didn't have, as I say, a lot of money to spend. So whatever little we had, I had to be very astute with it as best. We certainly tried to be as best we could. So obviously with Mark and Rodrigo as well, and we'd agreed a deal to buy both of them for €1 million each. And what happened with Rodrigo, he was used as part of the Di Maria deal. Di Maria came from Benfica to Real Madrid, and they used Rodrigo going the other way, and they kind of inflated his value as part of the deal. So we lost out on buying him for €1 million. But I wouldn't give up. I then went to Benfica and asked if I could get him on loan, given that he was young and everything else. And Benfica they listened to what we had to say, and they knew it would be good for him. So much so, you look at those two went on to be absolute stars in the game. And so it was nice, as young players to recognise that talent and bring them to the football club.
And obviously the first half of that season was fantastic, both as a fan and for people watching it. I mean, some of the football you played that year was fantastic. How important was it creating an identity in that season?
Well, it was, because I think Bolton, for whatever reason, had been tagged as a long ball team, a direct team, and I disagreed with that from the outset. I don't think they were. I think all the managers that had been there had some good players, and they played what suited them. But we wanted, as I say, to kind of evolve, and some of the football we were playing. I mean, I think we must have scored in terms of team goals. I think it was a goal against Blackpool at home. I mean, we must have been wanting to watch it. I mean, it was just a terrific footballing goal, and some of the goals we were scoring, I think Johan Omanders at Wolves, some of the football we were playing, and I probably think for probably about 3/4 of that season we were outstanding. I mean, we had the club in the top 6 or 7 in the league, having spent little or no money, but playing a brand of football everybody was enjoying, everybody was loving watching. And the only thing that hurt us laterally in that season was obviously we picked up some horrendous injuries, and it was difficult to replace like for like with those players. But with some wonderful players, I mean, Daniel Sturridge came in and joined the party as well, and what a wonderful player. So yeah, it was an exciting season full of good football, and we certainly enjoyed it.
You mentioned Johan Elmander's goal against Wolves, and he had his best season for the club in your year. What is it you said to Johan that made him a different player to what Bolton fans had seen previously?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the club had spent a huge amount of money. I mean, I wish I had that money to spend in my time there, but we didn't. But it had, and really, we just had to say to you, and listen, obviously the club, the fans, there's an expectation because of the investment that's been made in you. You obviously had a fantastic contract there as well, and we just felt, listen, relax, try and unburden that pressure as such, and just go out and remember how you played, what earned you that move in the first place. And he seemed to relish that, he seemed to enjoy that role, and then so much so, you're right, I mean, some of the football, and I've got to say, he didn't abetted by the skipper, because Kevin Davis, you could hang your hat on the skipper every week to go and give his very best for you. And I was delighted that in my period they eventually got the England cap that was long overdue, because I certainly felt he should have got that before he did. But it was nice to have played a small part in Kevin going on to achieving that, because I know how much he loves his country and everything else. So that was nice as well. So there was loads of little things like that the boys were doing that people were sitting up and taking notice. Gary Cahill became a regular starter in England setup, having been in a couple of squads. So it was nice when all that stuff comes around. But the players deserve enormous credit, because they were working their socks off every day. The fans were brilliant. The fans were getting behind them, enjoying the football, and it was nice to see.
I mean, you mentioned the Blackpool game. There was a game against Newcastle. I think it was a 4-0 win as well, where the fans were really on side. But one game I want to point out, it was live on Sky, was against Tottenham. Now, Gareth Bale had just tore into Milan apart back then into one of the top team in Italy. And you go and beat them 4-2, and Greta Steinton kept Bale quiet, didn't he, all afternoon?
Yeah, I've got to say, we were before the game. Of course, we knew, as you said, that not only Gareth Bale but Tottenham were on fire. They were playing out in their skins, so we knew we had to be our very best. The players knew that as well. But if we decided to kind of sit back and let them come on, they would have terrorised us. So we'd spoken about it before, and we made a game plan that we were going to take the game to Tottenham, and because we knew we had a good attacking threat. And then Greta Steinson, you're right, was outstanding on the day. And the forward players, I mean, some of the goals we scored, the football we played, and the atmosphere at the stadium. I mean, it was. I'm glad you mentioned it, because it was such an enjoyable game at a brilliant club.
And I mean, you mentioned Kevin Davis and all the work he does for the team. None epitomises it so much as that flick on, doesn't it, to Martin Petrov in the last minute of the game?
Absolutely, and that's the thing about the skipper. I mean, Kevin was a player that he didn't have to score goals to contribute to the team. He still brought his work rate. He brought his assists, knocking things down for people, bringing you up the park. And you're right. I mean, the knock on for the goal, it kind of epitomised everything he's about. Kevin wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a Bolton Wanderers man through and through, and he's many qualities.
So how proud was you then when he finally got the international call that you said he longly deserved?
Yeah, I mean, I'd been banging the drum from day one since coming in, and he was in terrific form that season, as you know. And spoke to Mr. Capello and his assistant, and I said, listen, I know you have fantastic strikers, which England do. I said, but Kevin gives you a different dimension, because he has different qualities that other strikers don't have. And I said, and if sometimes, if you need that type of player, then Kevin will be able to bring that. So they came and watched him, to be fair, 2 or 3 times, and he was in fantastic form. And, to see him being named in the squad was brilliant, but to actually see him enter the field, on the play, wearing that England shirt with pride, then it was a great moment for him and his family. And we were just delighted, to work with him, to see him get to that level. It was brilliant.
And you touched on it in January, another striker who's gone on to win a Champions League medal as well, Daniel Sturridge, joined the club. Just how crucial was Daniel to your end of season form as well?
Yeah, I mean, you can never. I mean, I remember Bruce certainly was my manager. If I think back to the team I played in, we had obviously some terrific strikers. And I always remember Bruce saying, you can never have enough good strikers at your football club. Keeps everybody on their toes. You can all score goals. And I get tipped off that Daniel might be available. Now, there must have been 10 or 12 clubs in for Daniel at the same time. I managed to sit down with him, speak with him and his family, and explain to him how we were as a football club, what we were all about, how the fans were, everything that was so good about Bolton Wanderers, and he'd seen the type of football we were playing. So having done all that, then he said, "Yeah, this feels right. I think I want to." So we fought off a lot of interest to get him in on loan, which we did, and he was sensational. I mean, from the time he came into us, he was the top scoring English striker in the Premier League from January to the end of the season. And he loved his time. I mean, again, you look back, because Daniel and Jack Wilshere, for me, they both went on to be, genuinely world-class players. What hurt both of them was they picked up injuries. And the crazy thing is, in their spells with us at Bolton Wanderers, they never missed one training session, never mind a game. They were always fit, they were always healthy. And we loved having them, and I think they really enjoyed being part of Bolton Wanderers.
And Daniel as well in his debut, that 90th minute goal against Wolves, a goal you'd be proud of, a proper poacher's finish.
Oh yeah, listen, we all with him. I'd said to him prior, because he'd just come in, he hadn't even met the boys, and I said, so listen, I said, you obviously start on the bench, but you come into the game, and if you have half the ability that I believe you have, then you'll be able to start all the rest of the games because of your quality. And that's what he did. You're right, he came on, and it was a big goal. And then he took a great lift from that, and everybody did, and he was sensational from then to the end of the season.
And another highlight, of course, up until a game I'll just touch on, is the FA Cup run. One game I'll bring up in that was the quarter-final at St Andrews against your old mates, how it's Micklish and Birmingham. Yeah. What an end-to-end game that was.
Well, I think you're right. It was the quarter-final, and the football club, Bolton Wanderers, have a tremendous history in the FA Cup, and it was something I was always, conscious of, and for the fans as well. And that game at the quarter-final, I mean, that was just, as cup ties go, for both teams, it was just an unbelievable game. You're right, to and fro, and then obviously getting the winner. It was sensational. So listen, we loved that. The big disappointment was the semi. Having done that, going to the semi-final, we didn't actually play badly in the semi-final, but we get punished for every shot that Stoke had, seemed to hit the back of the net. But prior to that, as you know, we picked up the injuries. So again, our team was a little bit. It wouldn't have been the team we would have picked to choose, and everybody was fit and healthy. And I think Stoke had 6 attempts at goal, and I think 5 of it was it was hurtful. It really was. You still think about that. It still hurts me every time I think about it just now. But again, for the fans, because we'd already beaten Stoke already. I think or was it the following season we thrashed them. But anyway, we'd already. I think it was the following season. But we had a good record against Stoke. We felt confident. We felt good. We were playing well. But the injuries ultimately came back to hurt us really, because we couldn't replace the Holden. Sam Ricketts had picked up a bad injury, and we missed some key players that day.
I mean, obviously Stuart Holden, that horrible tackle, wasn't it, at Old Trafford? It was, and it's a shame what happened to him since that, because he's never been the same, has he? Since that tackle.
And that's that. I mean, it was gut wrenching. It's gut wrenching for me. Never mind how it was for Stuart. If you think about it, because this was a boy that, in amongst. I'm talking about the Frank Lampard of Stevie. He stood toe to toe with them all, and he was outstanding. Ask any of them, they'll tell you how tough a game it was against them. He was an outstanding, and he was out with his ability as a man. He was an outstanding man. The players loved him, the fans loved him. He loved being part of that. The energy he brought, as a human being, never mind on the field. He was just a sensational player. And the problem we had, we didn't have anything even close to that to come in and compliment Fabrice and get that balance. Boys come in, we had to try and do this and that, but we never got that balance. And that had been, if I'm honest, that had been a huge part of what we were doing, how we built the team around that dynamic, the balance with Fabrice and Stuart. And yeah, that hurt us badly, it really did.
And also, I think, when I was looking at it as well, I think the loss of Daniel, because obviously it was cup tied as well, that took out the main goals, didn't it, as well?
Absolutely. And even then, from a psychology point of view, when you get Holden playing, a Sturridge playing, the players automatically feel really good. We've got terrific players playing. We've got a chance. As we felt at that season, we had a chance of winning any game. I mean, to have the club in the top 6, having spent no money, cutting back in budgets and everything else, the players were a credit to themselves, as were the fans. I mean, the fans were turning out in their numbers, getting behind the team. And that's why, the semi-final, that's who I felt for coming off that, because my first feelings for the fans, because I know how hard they work every week, come to support their team. And listen, you can see in my face the feeling I have when that game, when I get reminded of it. So yeah, it was certainly a hurtful day, that's for sure.
But obviously the fans then backed you to the hills the week after against Arsenal live on Sky. Everyone was thinking, I would love to be acting for Tammy Cohen, who just lost his dad as well. A poignant moment when he celebrated that winner. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it was that was a really emotional week, because having lost the semi-final in the manner we did, we were all hurting. We were absolutely gutted for ourselves, for the fans, for everybody at the club, because we generally felt that we could win that game and go to the FA Cup final, and that doesn't come around every year. So that was tough enough. But then obviously with Tamir's father passing, Avi Cohen himself was, as you know, an outstanding player. But and I know the loss of my own father, when that happens, I mean, it's tough to take. And I said to Tamir, and he says, "No, coach, I want to be on the field, I want to play." And the fans, I mean, I can't compliment the Bolton Wanderers fans enough, because they got behind him, they let Tamir know how much he was loved. And then it was, as football does, it's sometimes they write unbelievable scripts, because we were tipped obviously for Arsenal to come and take a few off us because of what happened the week before. But we showed our character, we showed our resilience, and then to pop up with a winning goal, it was a very emotional day, I have to say that. I mean, obviously the season then just kind of petered out, unfortunately. Yeah, I think because of the emotion involved, the psychological thing and everything else, we chopped and changed. We gave some players chances because we were in a great position ultimately. You wanted to lose games, but it kind of, as you say, it petered out. But knowing that again, come the summer, we're cutting back all the time, the budget's going to reduce, we're losing 1 or 2 players. We obviously knew that was going to be tough. What we didn't expect was to pick up the horrendous injuries we had. Obviously, Chung Yong Lee, a double leg break in a pre-season game. Marcus Alonso broke his foot again. Young Tom Eaves did his cruciate in a pre-season in Orlando. You just couldn't make up some of the serious injuries we picked up. And but that's the nature of football. You have to get on with it, and we did. We picked ourselves up, and because we had a slow start, as you know,
And then all of a sudden we started to galvanise, went to Blackburn, won a big game just before New Year to get ourselves up and moving. We're going in the right direction. And then, as we know, what happened to Fabrice at White Hart Lane, it was incredible. It was unbelievable how, the things that were happening at the football club.
I mean, obviously you mentioned Chungy then. I mean, I've got to ask as well, the Gary Cahill saga that summer, how much did that affect you as a manager trying to get everything prepared and all that's happening in the media? Yeah,
well, again, I mean, I was dealing with that every transfer window. I was having to deal with that. And I've got to say, Gary Cahill himself was an absolute gem of a man, exemplary man. It really was. I can't speak highly enough about him. And obviously we know his quality and how good he was as a player, but as a professional, as a man, outstanding. But yeah, we're having to deal with that. So the season prior to that, there'd been a deal agreed with Manchester City. Gary was going to Manchester City for $17.5 million. Plus, we were getting Nedum Mano in exchange, who was worth about $5 million at the time. So the deal was going to be worth about $22.5 million. And then there was something that happened to Manchester City's in between the managing director and the manager. There was whatever. So anyway, the deal kind of petered out, for want of a better phrase. It fell away, the deal. But then, of course, Arsenal were very keen, Tottenham were keen. They were all keen on Gary, but they were all below kind of the value that the club had placed on him. And I, to be fair to Gary, he used to come in and he'd say, if there's anything, tell me, boss, please tell me. And as long as I said to him, I'll keep you totally in the loop so you're aware of everything that's happening, which he was. And he was a constant professional. But obviously then come the January, because he was out of contract, then the club deemed that they wanted to take whatever money they could get. Now, that wasn't I wanted to keep Gary Cahill, because for me, for the amount of money we were receiving, it didn't tally up for the quality of Gary Cahill. But unfortunately, that wasn't my decision. That was the owner decided that he wanted some money brought back in, and ultimately it's his club. So it wasn't something I agreed with, but it happened. And even on that, I have to tell you a story about that. So it kind of dragged on for a couple of weeks about Chelsea, and then it was eventually agreed on this Monday night. And you'll remember the game. So I phoned Gary and I said, listen, Gary, that's everything agreed. I'm heartbroken to lose you, because for the fans, for the club and everything else, but I do understand, obviously, your situation, you're out of contract in the summer. My thinking was, let him run his contract out. Wherever he goes in the summer, good luck to him, because I know he would give his very best for us to the summer. And Gary Cahill's the difference probably between staying in the league and not staying in the league because of his quality. So anyway, I phoned him the Monday and I said, listen, so I said, I wish you all the best. And he said, no, Gaffer, I'll see you tomorrow night. I said, you won't see me tomorrow night, Gary. We're playing at Everton. He went, I know, I'm coming to play, boss. And I said, Gary, but God forbid if you pick him up. He says, no, I'll be there. And after the game, if everything's done, then I'll go to Chelsea. But I'll be there tomorrow night to play. And if you remember the game, it was the night when there was a terrible wind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Tim Howard kicked in, the ball spun over Adam's head, 1-0 down. I think it was David and Dog, it equalised, and then Gary Cahill pops up with the winner. Now, from my experience in football, if that had happened to the majority of footballers, you wouldn't have seen them on Tuesday night at Goodison. They would have been away to Chelsea that night. And that kind of, for me, sums up Gary Cahill as a man. Not just a footballer, because we know his qualities of football, but as a man, and what the club meant to him as well. As much as he was leaving to go to Chelsea and aspire for his career and all that, he's still in the real soft spot for Bolton Wanderers, what they've done for him, the opportunity they've given him, and the fans. And so that was a big part of his career, and he wanted to show that he still wanted to be there to help. So just an outstanding man, really was.
Yeah, I mean, something you just touched on now, I'm going to ask your side of it. March 2012, White Hart Lane FA Cup quarter-final, 5 minutes before half-time, Fabrice Muamba, I mean, I was watching it and you couldn't believe what happened, and someone on the touchline, you're obviously close with Fabrice as well, managing him. What was that moment like? First of all, did you know what happened straight away? And then, as soon as you got on the pitch, what was it like?
Yeah. Obviously, I'm focused on the game, and obviously we're attacking. You're right, St Patrick's Day, quarter-final FA Cup, we've got another chance to get back to the semis. It's a tough job, but we knew we had a good record against Tottenham. It was always close games, even when we kind of lost a couple to them 1-0, they'd scored late on, 30-yarders, top corner. It always taken special goals for them to beat us. We competed against them very well. And I think it was Andy Mitchell, my physio, says, Gaffer, Fabrice has just collapsed. I said, what? Because I'm watching the games that's moving on. So because nobody was near him, we knew it must be something serious for a player to. So immediately the boys got themselves set, Jonathan Tobin, the doctor, Andy Mitchell, physio, all set to get on, and which they did. And then obviously Dr. Andrew Diener was a Tottenham Hotspur season ticket holder, and he was in the stand, the heart specialist. And he knew immediately something, he'd seen it himself, so he knew the chief steward at Tottenham knew who he was and allowed him down onto the field. And I've got no doubts, had he not been there, it might have been a different outcome. So he was obviously meant to be at the game, he rushed on. But listen, I mean, for Fabrice's heart to stop for that length of time, and Gabriel took him through the other side, which he did. But when it happened, it was kind of surreal. We're like, what's going on? What's happening? Our thoughts straight away are just for Fabrice. Please God, let Fabrice be okay. And football then pales into insignificance. And that was all we were thinking about. Obviously, the game was abandoned, and I said to the skipper, and Kevin came with me with his clothes on. We went straight to the hospital, followed the ambulance to make sure that. And everybody was in shock. There's no getting away from it because as much as you do coaching badges and everything, nothing prepares you for a moment like that. So, but all, as I say, our overriding emotion is just please let Fabrice be okay. And obviously got to the hospital, and myself, Kevin, the chairman, Phil Gatside was there, and these specialists are working, doing their very best to try and find a way forward. So yeah, it was incredible moment, really was.
And obviously, I mean, thank the Lord, Fabrice came through it.
Oh wow! Yeah, I remember being in the room with his wife and his father, and Phil Gatside, the chairman, God rest him, myself, and the specialist said, "Listen, we're going to freeze, as I say, Fabrice, his temperature down for 24 hours, then we'll bring him back to body temperature and everything else." And they said, when we do that, we're convinced that his major organs will work, but we don't know as to what damage, for, I think it was 78 minutes to be starved of oxygen to your brain. They're kind of saying you would expect something to go amiss. But then obviously they did, the 24 hours came and went, and then they started to, and bit by bit that day, it was just truly remarkable. The improvement, the bits that kept getting better. And actually, I remember the specialist saying at one point, we actually don't know what's going on here, but we'll take everything that's going. It was just truly incredible. And to see Fabrice where he is now, it's just remarkable. He's such a clever, intelligent man, as he always was anyway, but to see him getting, but obviously his football was taken away from him, which was sad in that respect. But the good thing was that he got back fit and healthy with a lovely wife, a lovely family, and that was fantastic to see that come around again.
What was that feeling like the week after in the Reebok Stadium, local derby against Blackburn, and you see the tribute to Fabrice before the game?
Listen, it was so emotional because again the players had been through everything with him. Fabrice was dearly loved by his fellow players, and that he was such a charismatic lad. He was funny, he was witty, terrific player. He was heart and sleeve. He loved Bolton Wanderers, and everybody at the club had the same feeling for him. But you're right, it was because obviously the original game had been postponed, and then because the players, and I knew it was going to be difficult for the players but what we said is, listen, the fans will help you, which I knew that. The Bolton Wanderers fans will help you, as they've always done, through difficult times, they'll be there for you. And they were, and the fans were incredible, got the players lifted and went on to win a huge game, as you know. So, all credit to everybody at the football club that day. That was a special day because, Bolton Wanderers fans have always said anyway, they've always shown the real quality, outstanding as people. And they did that again. And it was nice that we were able to do that for Fabrice.
Yep, so obviously the season carries on and it gets to the last day with Britannia Bolton. Need a win basically to stay up. City away at QPR. QPR away at City, in that game, which we all know about. I've just seen it on Premier League years as well, the 2 goals. I'll ask you your opinion on them. Do you think either of them should have stood?
No, listen, I said at the time because we're into the game. To be fair, we probably hurt ourselves before at home to West Brom because we lost a late equaliser, probably trying to protect the lead. And even that day, I think it was David Wheaton that did his cruciate ligament that day.
Yeah.
We were 1-0. You couldn't believe this, the injuries. And nobody near David, and I think he'd done his medial ligament, his cruciate ligament that day, and we lost the equaliser. As we lost the late equaliser, I think Cooper scored the late winner at home against Stoke. So it kind of put them in the position that we had to win and they had to lose. But we went so confident. We knew, I think we thrashed them 5 earlier in the season at home. So we went confident that we could win the game. And I've got to say, I mean, referees are not my favourite people anyway, but the 2 goals that day, I think Chris Foy was the referee. And the 2 goals that were given that day against us were an absolute disgrace. I mean, the first one, Jonathan Walters bundled, absolutely, it was back to the 1940s and 50s when they used to hit you with your shoulder and bundle you over the line. That's what happened. But given the modern game, if you touch a goalkeeper, it's a free kick. How that goal was allowed to stand. But again, we picked ourselves up, got 2-1 in front, and then big Crouchy, he was a terrific player, but Crouchy takes a bad touch. He's over. He's took a big touch, too big. And Adam Bogdan's came out to smother it. Crouchy just fell over him, and Chris Foy gives a penalty. Listen, it was incredible. But even then, we had Tim Ream had a free header, 92nd minute, and then from the corner, a free header 4-5 yards out, and he headed it straight at the goalkeeper. And of course, Aguero scores to win the league for Manchester City, and we're punished by that. So again, listen, there was other games that we should have picked the points up and everything else, but some of the bad luck we had, some of the bad decisions that season, there's no doubt it hurt it. It really, really hurt us. And at the same time, it was a horrible feeling to lose your Premier League status, particularly for such a wonderful club.
Yeah. So obviously then you get used to a season in the Championship again. Like you said, budgets probably aren't there to spend on players to get yourself back up.
Yeah, we knew, listen, even in the Premier League, we've been cutting back every year from obviously what went before. And this was no different. We were going to, if you look back, we lost some players on big contracts that were there. We'd reduced the budget dramatically. But we brought 1 or 2 in Championship salaries and everything else to try and help us. And we'd a kind of indifference. We'd win here, we'd draw here. And I mean, my last game before leaving was at Millwall. On the Tuesday, Wednesday, we drew at home with Leeds United. And the actual football performance against Leeds United was sensational. We were outstanding. I don't know if it was a 2-each draw. Even then, I think we were given a penalty against it. It was never a penalty. But anyway, we went to Millwall. And to be honest, knowing what football is, we're going there to win. And if my memory serves me right, at 1-each, I think Chris Eagles missed a penalty. And then I think in the 93rd minute, last minute, they scored a goal. And ultimately after that, obviously, with the chat with the chairman, with Eddie, I think Eddie had made a mind that he wanted to change to freshen things up. And listen, was I gutted to leave? Absolutely, because I knew we'd come back up. The Championship, you just need a bit of momentum, as I've done before. But anyway, it wasn't to be. But nothing changed. Listen, a wonderful football club with good people, and gutted to leave, absolutely, because there's no doubt we felt we could have improved them again and got us back up to where we wanted to be. But that's football. You make decisions. I wished everybody all the best. I always do. And again, that's how football goes.
Obviously, looking at Bolton now, what's your thoughts on obviously the decline of Bolton?
Yeah, listen, you're always saddened. But obviously from when I came in, then the money that was owed and everything else, that had obviously been accumulated prior. And from at that point, it was always getting cut back. So you knew at some point, there was going to be, however it was done. But I mean, the last thing you want for a football club like that is to be in administration and change hands and drop down the leagues. But my only hope, as I've always said, and I know this will happen, Bolton Wanderers will come again. They've done it before, if you remember, way back in the 70s. We had to sell, had to sell the terrace in the ground behind the goal. I think it was Normand, wasn't it, the Superstore?
It was Normand, yeah.
Yeah, because half of my shots used to hit the wall. So the reason that, but so they've had tough times and they've came again, and Bolton will do that because the fan base they have, the people in the town, they'll always rallied, they'll always galvanised, they'll always got behind their club. So my hope is that the people that have come in are good people with the best intentions for the football club, and step by step, Bolton Wanderers will go back to the heights they've been before. I've got no doubts about that.
And obviously, you went after you had a few months off, and then you take the job in the summer of an FA Cup team Wigan, who won the FA Cup, got relegated. What was your memories of your time at Wigan? Yeah, well, I came in, and again, obviously being in the North West, and I came in, and they'd obviously lost their place. And again, it's a bit similar to Bolton in respect of they were cutting the budget.
they sold the best players. James McCarthy on transfer deadline day for nearly 15 million to Everton. Coney, the striker, already went to Everton for 5 million. So they sold over 20 million of players. And we brought one or two good players into the club to help. But no, I think we spent about, I don't know, maybe 4 million of the 20 odds. So there was a huge deficit and we're losing good players. But we're in, and the chairman, Mr. Whelan, had done so much for Wigan and the club over the years, but he's very much of his own mind and liked to do things his way. So we kind of clashed a couple of things. I've got nothing disrespectful to say to the man. He loved his club. He was a great man for his team and his club. But there was one or two things we probably didn't see eye to eye on. But equally as well, we also had the Europa League run, and we were one game from qualifying for the knockout stages. And when I left Wigan, we were 3 points off the playoffs with a game in hand. So I never left through football. We'd actually a good team. We were playing some decent stuff. So, but that's, again, sometimes you don't see eye to eye for whatever reason. But again, wish them all the best. No, I don't live my life, wishing people don't do well. That's not how I work. I wish them all the very best. Pick yourselves up, go again, which they did, and all the very best to them. So no problem with that. And that's been. Sorry.
I was just going to say, then, obviously, Wigan in the news recently, haven't they, over the situation, all that's happened at that club as well?
Yeah, but that's a really strange one because they just had new owners, didn't they? And there was no mention of any financial trouble and everything else. And then all of a sudden, even I think they played the game the night before, and then the following day it was announced. It was kind of bizarre timing. And then, and to be fair, they had a good team, and Cook had obviously had them on a great run. And I mean, even if there is, I don't know, because it's still up in the air, isn't it, with an appeal with the deduction. Yeah. And, even with the appeal, they still nearly actually, even if they did deduct the 12 points, they still nearly preserved their status. So, let's hope that, I just want all the best for all the North. I'm a football fan. You want football clubs, particularly clubs that you've been at, to do well. So I'm hoping that, they get a good outcome and they're able to stay where they are.
And your next career move takes you not from the Northwest, but to the other side of the world, into North America at Houston. How was that experience for you?
It was great. If you remember, obviously we played Houston with Bolton Wanderers and in a good relationship. And when it came about, Chris Canetti, who was the president, had got in touch and would have interest. I went over, met him, seen around the stadium, the club, and obviously the MLS growing and everything else. And I've got to say, I loved it. Absolutely loved my time there. Great man, Chris. We're really enjoying it. The lifestyle and the people and everything else. And then my oldest daughter was getting married and having her first grandchild. So that was the reason I came back. And they were very good to me. And, so we came back. And I was back 3 days and I was offered a job in Scotland that I turned down because I wanted to be back. And then I was offered the Blackburn job. And obviously, again, with hindsight, having been a really successful Burnley manager, the rivalry between Burnley and Blackburn is incredible. I come from Glasgow with Celtic and Rangers, and I think that's mad. But for two relatively, I would suggest, small towns, the rivalry is off the chart. It's incredible. But being a football man, as you always do, you think, well, if you put a winning team in the field, people enjoy the winning team, and everything else is. So I came in, knew it was going to be tough, but it became tougher because the owners, in their wisdom, decided to sell Grant Hanley and Shane Duffy to Newcastle and Brighton for £12 million. And the budget, obviously, they decided to cut that. That was one of the reasons. That's why Paul Lambert left, unbeknown to me the season before, because Paul had come in the November, December, did well initially, and I'd like to believe he was offered the big transfer kitty and budget to try and get promoted. And then from February they lost a few games, and the owners changed their mind because they sold Jordan Rhodes for $10 million, I think, in January. And then they said to Paul, we've changed our mind, the budget's going to be cut. And that's why Paul said, well, I'll be leaving then. So anyway, they carried on that through, and they did. They did cut the budget, they did sell the best players. And so again, we had a tough start on that. But then we picked up, we started doing really well. I've certainly picking up some big results, beat Newcastle, who ended up in the champion, beat them home and away, who ended up getting promoted. And but then in the January, I had lined up 2 or 3 players to come in. And again, they sold in Ben Marshall to Wolves for $3 million. So it became tough. And at that point, again, we had a frank chat, again, very amicable. And we decided, to call it quits and move on. So that's the nature of football. I had an opportunity then to run out of time here. Roy McGregor, a good friend of mine in Ross County, so I went up there for a few months with Roy, 3 months in total, but the travelling became a challenge because obviously I'm based in the northwest. And then obviously last year I had a wonderful opportunity to go to India, which I did. Loved my time there. Took a team that was bottom of the league to up into the playoff positions with a chance to be champions, and unfortunately lost out on the final championship game. It was played behind closed doors. It was only 6 days before, or 7 days I think, before lockdown back here, so I was lucky to get back in time. But a wonderful experience, great football we played, and it was nice to go and win games, get that winning feeling that I've had many, many times in my career. And again, looking forward to a new challenge now. So listen, I've been very lucky and very blessed in my career in football, and I thank everybody that's, I've worked with, the supporters that have cheered for me and shouted at me at different times for whatever reason. That's the nature of football. But yeah, so to everyone out there, thank you so much, and I'll continue doing that, and hopefully, put winning teams in the field that can put a smile on people's faces.
Yeah, Owen, I've got to say, I've really enjoyed our chat. I know it's been taking a while, and
no, but listen, sorry, you carry on, yeah.
I was going to say, for tradition on this podcast is normally to ask a few quick fire questions about you. Is that something you'd be okay to do? Yeah. Yeah,
let's rattle through them.
Yeah. So I've got to ask, first of all, favourite ground that you played at?
As a player, I would have to say, bizarrely, well, there was a few lovely, I've got to say, in England, but growing up in Glasgow, I used to love playing at Ibrox, which was Rangers Stadium. And being a Celtic supporter, I did quite well and scored a few goals. So I would have to say, loved when I played at Celtic Park because that was my team. But I also loved going to Ibrox to play against Glasgow Rangers.
Your favourite ground as a manager then?
I always loved the Emirates as a stadium. But I always remember, and that actually, I think it probably stems from my time as a player at Bolton, when we went to the old Highbury for the replay. And I always remember, Bruce loved the Arsenal, and that's how, the marbles and this and everything else. So, but then when obviously Highbury, and they built the new stadium, but the Emirates Stadium, beautiful, beautiful stadium. I think as a Bolton fan, you always like going to Manchester United and playing well against Manchester United. I've been a Bolton player and then a manager. You always wanted to go there and compete. So some beautiful stadiums. There's no doubt about it. But I always, when I think back to a player, I love the feel of the old stadium. Bundon Park with the camber on both sides. And I remember the history and telling me about the fullbacks who used to send the Bolton fullbacks who used to send the wingers, the good wingers down on those slopes, and so stuff like that. I mean, I'm a bit love all that stuff. Love the old, the older stuff.
Well, sentimental.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got to say the old Wembley for in terms of for atmosphere for the playoff final that we won. That was a special day. So if I had to pick a stadium as a player, it would be the old Wembley Stadium because of the 4-3 game against Reading, coming back from 2-0 down and giving the Bolton Wanderers fans just a fantastic day. Your
best mate in football, if you've got one?
Well, obviously John McGill, we're as thick as thieves. I mean, he's outstanding. See, the thing, people know John as a footballer, and he's an outstanding footballer. But as a man, John McGinley, I mean, he would do anything. He's got a heart of gold. He really has. He would do anything for people. He's such a nice man, and just say he's got a big heart. So yeah, McGinley. I remember going to watch him when he played for Scotland, and it was actually up at Ibrox and against Sweden, I think. So yeah, he was loved playing for his country. But my boy, I've got to say, does he love Bolton Wanderers? He's a terrific man.
And lastly, with the Scottish Premiership starting up, Celtic, can we do 10 in a row?
Yes, absolutely, all day long. I think Rangers will put up a fight, but Celtic have quality. And the other thing is they're able to go and they'll still, I think, sign 2 or 3 players. So, no, I think they'll absolutely, I think they'll be able to do that.
Well, Owen, like we said, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to come and speak to us here on Taylor Talks. We really appreciate it.
Listen, it's been a pleasure. What we'll do is, I mean, even in a couple of months' time, we'll come again. We'll get more time and we can go through different stuff. You might have a load of questions. If you want to do like a kind of question-answer session, I'll be more than happy to do that.
Yeah, we'll definitely take you up on that offer, Owen, and we'll look forward to seeing what the future holds for you in football.
Good man. All the very best. Take care.